Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now.
This episode is brought to you by Enquiry Tracker. Easily manage all your inquiries, tours, open houses, and applications with a system designed by K-12 education marketing and admissions professionals.
Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Aubrey Bursch.
And I'm Tara Clays. Today we're joined by Suzy Wagner. Suzy is the president of Brand and Buzz, a strategic communications firm specializing in using communications to grow businesses. A veteran of Time Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, and the LA Times, Suzy has worked with some of the world's most recognizable brands, international clients, and nonprofits. Her clients say she injects positive energy into every campaign. And having known her for many years, I can say positive energy is a great term to describe both of the women that I'm speaking with today. Welcome, Suzy. We're so glad to have you here.
I'm happy to be here too. Thank you for having me.
I can't even tell you, I'm so excited that we're diving into this topic, and I'm so excited that we're talking about it with you. But before we get started, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I think that intro is like really flattering. Listening to all the places I've worked, it sounds like way more exciting than it really was at the time. But I've had this cool advertising, public relations, kind of events, communications background, a really integrated hybrid experience. And I've been at conference rooms having conversations with someone like the biggest brands in the world, talking about campaigns that you would remember, like things that, you think about television ads and you're like, oh, I remember that thing. Like I had the opportunity to work on a lot of those things. And so, about 10 years ago, I made the change to leave the Wall Street Journal, which was a job I didn't love. I will say it. Being in a newspaper in the 2000s was really a tough place to be. And I wanted to take all this experience and have the flexibility to work on the programs that I loved and with clients I really liked. And I've really never looked back. It's been incredible because I've worked with foreign governments and nonprofits and healthcare, rare disease, technology, think tanks, national security, DoD. And so the experience just being in Washington has given me a lot of different awareness. And I did a ton of work with schools, both at the elementary, middle, high school, and collegiate level with different programs, Georgetown and Arlington Magazine. So I feel like communication is all scalable. It's basically the same principles, but you use them in different ways depending on your industry. How's that?
We're going to dive in and dig into your experience and how it might apply to the idea of public relations for schools. I mean, everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame. Most people do, as long as it's good, right? So schools especially, they want to have, I hear this all the time, they want to have their stories picked up in the local press. How can we get our event picked up? How can we get this great story picked up? It's really hard to get the attention of local news. So let's start off like coming out of the gate. What advice do you have for schools in managing their expectations around this coverage and public relations?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. When I was working with the Embassy of Japan, they actually said the opposite. They said, whenever we do programs in schools, media wants to cover it, which is a real positive for schools and education outlets to start thinking about it. It can be hard to have some of the mundane things. I think too often schools get attention for things they kind of don't want to talk about. Maybe it's drugs or suicide. I mean, what we hear so often is live shooter, and that's just devastating to everyone to think about. Schools want to pivot that to something positive. Anniversaries, healthy eating, walkathons, charity, community engagement, whenever they can kind of elevate those ideas, especially if there's a really good opportunity to get cameras. So maybe it's, a walkathon, or Girls in the Run is doing something and they're tying it back into community involvement, like through fundraising or something like that. I think they've got a better shot at getting media attention there. Anything new and different, the tree plantings, maybe not so much. Major change in the lunchroom for healthy eating to combat cancer and diabetes and other illnesses, like really positive. So it sometimes is being thoughtful about what's happening in the world at that moment and then tying in a news hook. Mother's Day, maybe there's like some really beautiful thing that's supporting a breast cancer survivor or moms in the community, things like that. schools can kind of be thoughtful about. Or maybe it's pivoting to curriculum to address AI in schools. So it's really just kind of thinking about where people's attention is going at that moment in time, like holidays, vacation, going back to school, and then thinking about the hooks and the stories that will get their message out there.
So that's really interesting. If you think about how to approach this, would you say that you actually just sit down and brainstorm some of these things? Is that what you're doing right now? Seems like brainstorming, like you're coming up with
this is my process, Tara. I roll out a bunch of ideas. Yeah, I mean, in communications, it's always helpful to work from the reverse. So it's, who are you talking to and what do you want to say? And then once you have those two ideas defined, then you can rewind the clock and come up with the right pitch, right angle, and then tell it in a very succinct way to a news producer, editor, journalist, especially if they're already writing on that topic. Schools would be very well advised to get to know the people that are writing the stories that they like to read and build the relationship. My rule number one in business is people do business with people they like. And you can also add know and trust to that list. And so if you know all the education reporters in your locality, wherever you are in the world, and you start to build that relationship, they know that you will respond at speed, accurately, honestly, and you'll be straight with them. You're not going to, just give them the party line. You're going to be as candid as you can. You start to build credibility, and then journalists, reporters, media outlets know that you are a trusted source, and they'll keep going back to you. And then they start reaching out to you. So it makes it a lot easier to get the attention.
I'm really glad that we're covering this topic, and that I love what you said, because so often schools will be like, we're going to just, send out a press release. And I'm like, well, how's that relevant to what the reporter is actually like? I was like, think like a reporter, like what's going on? Is it World Art Day? Is it something like, what is your school doing that aligns with what's going on right now, right? Make it timely, interesting, and something a reporter actually would want to write about or cover. So I really appreciate you talking about that. Now, I'm curious, because like just talking about the press release, a lot of schools have that ingrained. That is the first step that they need to take, and they write this official looking thing and then they send it off. And we talk about relationships, super important, but like what other things can they do? What other tools are there to connect with reporters? How should they be presenting this information to reporters in a way that's digestible and usable by reporters?
I have written so many press releases. It makes me sad because they're terrible. I mean, it's all the standard stuff. You've got your header, you've got your passionate quote, you've got your stats, and they tend to get really long. Sometimes they get picked up brilliantly. And so I wouldn't say don't use them. They're an important tool. They're an important way to get your ideas clearly on paper. And a lot of outlets, especially when they're pressed for time, will pick it up, run it verbatim, good to go. It becomes its own story. But what you just said was so smart. And what I would encourage schools to do is, yes, keep writing your press releases, but take a minute, especially in over the summer when they're having the planning meetings, they're talking about curriculum changes or books that they're going to be buying, or whatever the things are that they're going to be studying, and then take a step back and just say, well, how and when should we be talking about these things publicly? Are there going to be any issues? Right now, banned books are becoming an issue. In certain localities, you can't talk about family health, education, depending on the age of the kids. Even more into that, we live in this world of LGBTQIA++, pride. Are you allowed to talk about non-binary and gender issues? So schools have to be really thoughtful about all of the things they're juggling. And then in that planning time over the summer, they can take just a few minutes or an hour and say, okay, guys, let's look at the calendar of the year. We've got Mother's Day, Father's Day, the holidays, Election Day. When do we want to roll out messages, elevating the great work that we're doing, and maybe even some of these sensitive topics that could be getting different kinds of media attention. So I really encourage schools to have a planning time. And then they can really be thoughtful about those press releases, and they will come up over the course of the year, but at least they can have some things ready to go, and then they won't be caught, flat-footed.
Yeah, so good. I think Avi and I are both getting more and more questions as we're. This listening. So here's another one. So you have all of this information, you put together all this planning.
Mhm.
Where do you find contacts? Like, how do you even know? Like, I know what my local news stations are, but I have no idea how to contact them, or I might be missing some that are important. So what are some resources for how to actually then get your information in front of somebody?
Yeah. It's a really, really good question. Believe it or not, like we live in the DC area. The Washington Post, most reporters have, if you click on their byline, you can get right to their email address. And you can send them emails, you can connect with them directly. Social media is a great outlet. So if you're following some education reporters or news reporters that cover education topics or issues like that you want to cover, you can start just direct messaging and tweeting to them and say, hey, I work at this school and we cover these topics. We'd love just to set up a lunch and learn or a coffee, have you by the campus. You can just really simple touches like that. Or you can even just connect with some PR consultants in the area. Most of us have subscriptions to things like Sisson and Meltwater and databases where we can pull lists of reporters, bloggers, all different kinds of outlets. And I would also say, don't ignore podcasters. I mean, the service that you guys are doing, you've got a great audience and you've got people who are following you. And so you got to think really broadly because there's so many different places where people get news and information. It's not just Channel 4.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's true. Like, as we're thinking, like we always think, when you're thinking PR, you're like news channel, written, but what about podcasting? I mean, there are so many, and as, things grow and change, we need to keep in mind that there are different places to get your story featured.
I mean, think about next door. I can't tell you how often I've seen something happen. Maybe it's a car accident, or maybe it's I don't know, something's happening in the news. And I see journalists on Nextdoor. I see them on Twitter. I see them on Instagram Live, and they're saying, "Hey, can I use this video? Hey, can I pick up this tweet? Hey, can you call me?" And so they're really trying to work at speed using social media channels as well. So it's really just about being creative and thinking about where you get your news and then asking. It's great to pull parents and kids, like, is TikTok still a thing? All right, who's popular in that? And then you can kind of, build your old school Rolodex of people to reach out to.
Yes. So we've also used board members who are connected. Anyone in your board or your parent community connected with the media is always a good option.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, like I know some entrepreneurs have used Haro or Haro.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if would you recommend that service for school, or what are your feelings on that?
I actually kind of like it, but as a PR professional, I have not had a tremendous amount of success with it. The acronym stands for Help a Reporter Out. And so I think it's free. You can just sign on to their newsletter and check the boxes on the topics that you care about. What's nice is it pops in your inbox every day and it has specific, queries. I'm a reporter working on deadline. I want information on this stuff. So it is nice. And it's a good way to meet some different tier journalists as well. They're not all top tier. Some of them are working at smaller publications. Even community news is really important because you got to think about who you're trying to reach. And for the most part, schools are, except for some of the bigger boarding schools, I think are trying to reach within their zip codes.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I'm taking a step back and thinking about this from a higher perspective, like as a general marketing strategy, right? As we are marketers, and I know you are too, right? This is one piece of a marketing strategy. And so, getting excited about getting in the press, sometimes it's not something that you necessarily plan for. But if you do plan for it, as you're talking about, like you're being strategic and thinking about it, I want to ask you about how it overlaps with social media, because that's happening. That's in your control, right? You're posting it there. So should you be putting stuff on social media that you're also trying to get in the press? Do you want to wait till it's in the press to put it on social media? How does that work, and how do they work together?
I think it's a great question. And it's such a timely question. There's two answers. One is, yes, you want to have an integrated communications campaign, especially about something positive that you can control. But something else you said about social media and public relations, reaching out to media as being some of the tools that you have. Absolutely. And I can't tell you how often in communications, people, clients just want the silver bullet. Like, what's the one thing we need to do? And it's like, well, it's lots of things. It's not just one thing. And, there was this great study done. I mean, honestly, you guys, like 50 years ago by Roper Research. And it was the first time the term word of mouth had ever been coined. And over the last 50 years, they keep refreshing the survey and it's still consistent. And what it comes down to is 1 in 10 Americans tells the other 9 where to shop, what to buy, what restaurants to go to, what schools to send their kids to. And word of mouth is the most powerful, influencer. And I believe word of mouth happens when your own media, all the stuff you can control, your outreach and your websites and your content, and your earned media, anything people were saying about you. So your parents and your board members and your school board, like, news and PR stuff. And then your paid media, that's sponsorships, anything you pay for. When those 3 things work together and you have that really thoughtful message that goes consistently across all those things, then you start to build that kind of brand awareness and word of mouth that everyone's seeking. And that to me is the biggest differentiator. It requires discipline. So then you need, as your school, you need to make sure that your teachers and your administrators and your external communications people, your internal and external marketers, that you all are being consistent in your language. So if you say, we do this, then that has to go across everything. And absolutely social is a really good place to play on it.
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, with like a clear, consistent message across all people, all platforms. So important.
It sounds easier than it is, right? Like no one ever does it, but it's the goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we see schools struggling with this as people, change out of positions, and then how is that onboarding process handled and everything like that. So yes, definitely a great reminder to schools. Now, you kind of may have covered one of these in that last discussion, but what are some mistakes that you see organizations make when it comes to PR?
Yeah, they talk to their hand. It's like, who are you talking to? It's like put your hands down. I feel like so often people get nervous and they think they know what they want to say, but when they go to say it, it doesn't quite come out. It doesn't quite land, and I think that's where you have to get consensus buy-in from your team. You have to say, okay, we're going to launch this initiative. We really want to get some buzz about it. We want people talking about it. This is what it means. And then make sure everyone in the room who's going to be talking to different influencers and audiences, that they lean in and embrace that same language, that everyone is on the same page. I mean, to me, that's the biggest mistake any size organization makes.
You actually script things out and practice them in that?
I mean, I do. I mean, not for today, but in general, I spend a lot of time doing that for clients. Yeah. And then